that they are not defying court orders. One is they say that, well, you issued the order to turn the planes around from the bench, and we don't really think that that has the same weight as a written order. The judge very much yesterday in that hearing rejected that particular claim. Another claim that was made was that, oh, well, the planes were over international waters when you issued your ruling, so it was too late, basically. We couldn't or wouldn't, once it was over international waters, we weren't going to turn them around. Well, one thing that came out yesterday, I can put this up on the screen, this chart of the flights, at least one of the flights was actually still on the ground at the time in Texas when the initial order at 6:48 was read from the bench. Okay, so another claim that the government has made is, well, actually that particular plane, the third one, and by the way, the other two had not yet reached their destination, either when that initial order was read from the bench or when the final written order came down. So the other claim was, well, the third plane, that one was subject, that wasn't Alien Enemies Act, that was different powers. Of course, we don't know who was on the plane, so we have no idea. And basically, Sagar, yesterday, the government pretty much stonewalled it, just wouldn't answer any questions.
The government is citing Title 50 authority, which is intelligence. Like you said, on the third plane, the result of the hearing yesterday basically is Judge Boasberg is demanding that the government issue a sworn affidavit that the third plane was not invoked under the Alien Enemies Act and was used under a different authority. They said none of the plaintiffs, of the 5 plaintiffs that were ordered under Judge Boasberg, were on board that plane. It was the other 2. So this is almost certainly rocketing to the Supreme Court within the next 2 weeks. The authority over Alien Enemies Act, over the ability of a federal district judge to order something, what I think is extraordinary, we debated it extensively yesterday, to literally force a plane that is outside of the United States to turn around and come back to the United States. There's both legal scrutiny over that specifically. As I understand it from Boasberg, this is not a ruling on the Alien Enemies Act whatsoever. He is asking for a declaration of who is covered under the Alien Enemies Act, but the Alien Enemies Act provision is not itself the one that is under a legal scrutiny. It's the removal authority for due process under the government for the specific plaintiffs that were named by the ACLU. But I was just saying, in terms of what I read yesterday from the review of the Alien Enemies Act, the judge, it's complicated. Basically, it's not as cut and dry, I think, as saying this was up to the judge as to whether this was the Alien Enemies Act or not, as to whether it is employable. It is these specific individuals, the legitimacy of applying that to these specific individuals under the ACLU of the plaintiffs with this action that the planes took off. And I know this is incredibly complicated. I've genuinely tried to read for hours about something called like judiciability or something. Judicity, which is the ability to apply judicial review, which is what the government is also claiming, and that came out in a Stephen Miller interview. Anyway, go ahead.
So here is the timeline, and this will help clarify some of what happened here. So obviously, Trump has been saying for a long time, including on the campaign trail, I'm going to use the Alien Enemies Act. So lawyers with the ACLU and other groups were like ready to go, like, okay, when he does that, we are going to challenge that. And they started to get, there were news reports that he was moving towards invoking the Alien Enemies Act, and some of the people that they were in touch with started to get moved around. Some Venezuelan migrants started to get moved around and all shipped, excuse me, to this Texas ICE detention facility. And so they suspected, okay, this is imminently coming. So knowing that the government was going to act really fast, they filed an initial suit with these 5 particular migrants as their clients involved in this suit. Then, once it became completely clear and perhaps even waited for the official declaration, then they expanded it to the entire class of migrants. So that this was now not just about these 5 individuals. This was about the entire class of migrants and who were held, undocumented migrants who were held in DHS facilities, so that it would apply to everyone who might be put on these planes and shipped down. So that's how this ends up. The judge, the court system actually in this instance acted quite quickly. The judge from the bench at 6:48 says, you cannot, I'm issuing a temporary restraining order. That is not a finding on the merits, but his view was it is likely that the use of the Alien Enemies Act is going to be found to be illegal. And so in order to prevent harm in the meantime from occurring, I'm issuing this temporary restraining order so this can work its way through the courts on the merits and decide whether it's appropriate invocation. You know, it's never before, like he's claiming that Venezuela, by dint of their proxy, this gang Tren Aragua, has invaded the country. It's never been issued before outside of like clear-cut wartime instances, 1812, World War I, World War II. So a lot of legal questions, to say the least, about whether this is appropriate. You know, what it led to is the Trump administration being able, without any due process, to take people, they sent them to this foreign prison, notorious in El Salvador for torture and human rights abuse. So anyway, all of this is legally dubious, to say the least. So he issues a temporary restraining order. It's meant to apply to all migrants, not just the 5 that were specifically originally named in the lawsuit. And that's where these, you know, timings come in. So 6:48 is when he issues the ruling. Those planes are, 2 of the planes are in there, 1 of them still on the ground. Again, the government has refused to say who was on these planes. They've refused in the hearing yesterday. They refused even to reveal when the planes took off, when they landed. They're citing national security, et cetera. So the very latest from the judge out of this hearing was, you have to tell us by noon, I believe today, the answers to these questions. And if you need to do it under seal, okay, that's fine. And we're going to have another hearing on Friday. But the judge is very perturbed, seemingly, at the government's stonewalling and, you know, defiance of what the judge ultimately asked them to do.
Yeah, that's incredibly well said. That's exactly right. So I know it's really complicated for people to stick with. It will eventually come down to a ruling on Friday. It will almost certainly immediately be appealed, and then it is going to rocket its way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where it is almost certainly that the meta questions around this are going to be solved. And it is one that is now like, this is always the issue. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to everything. I've done my best to look at the TikTok, like I said, to look into the Title 50 authority, the judiciary, the ability to apply judicial review, reading the statute of the Alien Enemies Act itself, which, by the way, is actually worth reading because it's from 1798. But the point being is we are in a situation where this is almost certainly going to get resolved at a high level, and that is, it appears, just from what I've been able to see, that's kind of something that they want, because this is a fight that they are very comfortable picking with the public. As you said, Tom Homan, who is the White House border czar, appeared on television immediately afterwards and was defiant. Let's take a listen.
Proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
So, I mean, pretty defiant there from Tom Homan. This is the thing. At the end of the day, there's a lot of messaging war that's also happening here, because that's not even really true. Like, they do care what the judge thinks, because they're not continuing the deportation flights. They keep saying they're going to. It's not actually happening. And it's one of those where they're both trying to placate an incredible amount of frustration in the administration over the numerous amounts of temporary restraining orders and other things that have come out. This one is a fight that they feel very comfortable both picking and getting the precedent set at the Supreme Court to resolve it in the incoming years of the outcoming years of the administration, to try and resolve these and to basically force a fight on the ability for TRO district judges to intervene on every individual deportation case. But I think what's happening is that we're watching a fight that they feel very, very comfortable picking, in particular on this one. And it's actually kind of noteworthy to me that this is the one that's been the most high profile one, and it's not Doge, where, look, they've talked a game in the past, and Elon has said, what, we need to impeach judges, et cetera. They have never really gone all that far. There's been some questions over, like, I would say, like, moderate compliance or whatever on USAID, et cetera. But, like, this is the one where this is the big one. And for them, I think it too, just yesterday a poll came out showing border and immigration is actually the #1 issue that Trump has right now. Unfortunately for him, he's underwater on the economy, and we're about to talk about that in a second. It actually may be, I've been thinking about this. I think one of the reasons that all of this is happening right now is it doesn't take a genius to look at the news and say, oh my God, every day we're getting pummeled on Doge and on the stock market. Our tariff stuff not working. Now we've got a full-blown war in Gaza. It's like, well, what do we have left? Well, the immigration promises, which we literally have not even kept for the first 50 days of the administration. Any serious immigration person could have told you that. The numbers were basically on par for actual deportation with the Biden administration, and they were using Doge excuses, saying, oh,